right, so we're back for my regular conversation with my friend Evangelos Simoudis of Synapse Partners. He has a blog, which you can find at corporateinnovation.co. We are recording this on the morning of December 12th, 2025. And we're going to talk about a lot of things, and the links to the resources will be found in the episode notes on the dataexchange.media. If you're on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. Otherwise, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. So topic number one, we want to kind of drill down on the notion of AI as a utility. Is it or is it not a utility? And the context here is we're discussing this the week after President Trump has signed a controversial executive order aimed at dismantling state-level regulations for governing AI, with the goal of creating a single national regulatory framework. And they're arguing that this kind of unified front is necessary to compete with China. All right. So with that long-winded intro, Evangelos, utility. Give me one We'll go through properties of utility. So give me one property of a utility, and then tell me whether or not AI meets this property.
So the first one would be whether it is broadly usable. And what I mean by that is, can everybody in the population use this capability, or do they need special training before they can do it? My answer to this, short answer, is that today we're finding that yes, people do need special training. We have on one extreme the approach that Middle Eastern countries are taking, where they're starting to introduce AI in the early stages of their children's curriculum. We have some other examples of enterprises finally realizing that their employees need that kind of training, and they're starting to put programs in place. But this is not, even though LLMs have shown and chatbots have shown tremendous capability, broadly usable has to be one of the characteristics.
So now one can say, for example, electricity is broadly usable. I can just go up to an outlet, plug something. So to some extent, maybe listeners will say AI is broadly usable, so I can go to a chatbot and start talking to it. Whether or not I'm using it properly is a secondary thing, but the same thing with an electricity outlet.
That goes to my second characteristics, actually, which is accessibility. So I separate usability, like what it takes for me to interact with the system and make good use of it, versus accessibility, which is to me like the dial tone.
Let me ask you about the usability. Some may argue, so some listeners, more bullish listeners, may argue, well, it's usable because I can just use it.
Yes, and the question is, do you need, in order to make effective use of it, do you need to have better education? And frankly, from our firm's perspective, when we talk to enterprises, and this is how a lot of this conversation started, we're finding that they recognize, enterprises starting to recognize that in order for their employees to be effective users of AI and make a difference to their business, productivity-wise, cost-wise, these employees will need to have the right education. Whether that education is a 2-hour course or whether that education is a longer curriculum, it doesn't really matter to me. But the fact is that there are a lot of usability today, even though the interaction with the chatbot is easy. In order to make it usable, my argument is you need certain things. The same thing, by the way, if you take electricity, right? Yes, you don't want your child to put their finger in the outlet. You need to say to that this is a bad thing, right? You need to teach the employee the difference between 110 volts and 220 volts, right? I mean, there are differences like that. And that's why I'm talking about usability. And then I'm separating that from the accessibility, which to me is the notion of a dial tone, right? The fact, or electricity for that matter, right? We're not there yet. We're getting there, but to me, these are two distinct characteristics as opposed to one characteristic.
So accessibility, where does AI fall under accessibility?
I don't think that we are there yet. I think that we're striving to do that. And you look at, for example, the numbers reported by OpenAI. They say, well, we have 900 million monthly users. Think of how many people have a mobile phone around the world, right? Think of what is necessary in order for somebody to access and make good use of or even of a chatbot, let alone other AI tools. So we're getting there, but we're not there yet. And my argument is, if we want to get there, the question is what kind of investments will be necessary and who will be making this investment, right? This is the difference between utility versus infrastructure, right? In the case of utility, take any utility in the world, they are required to make certain investments to provide access. Think of what we did when we wanted to provide internet in rural areas in the US, right? I think that if we want to make AI a utility, we need to be thinking along those lines. We're not there yet.
I see what you're saying. So, but basically, even broadband access in the US, for example, is still wanting, right? So
exactly. And again, the question is, where do we want to place AI in this national imperative?
All right. So property tree.
Affordability. Today, if I want to have continuous interaction with a chatbot, I need to pay. If I want a free interaction, then the quality of the output I receive is impacted. Think of the various plans.
But what about electricity?
Well, exactly. But with electricity, I have rates. It's not that I get lower quality electricity. I get paid on use, but the quality is exactly the same, right? Here, we're saying that with AI, we have a difference in quality based on how much you're willing to pay.
So it's service-oriented delivery.
Yeah, look, it's very similar to internet. Internet today, I pay a higher price to my provider in order to get higher speeds, right? Better bandwidth. I think we need to think about that, though, or what it means for AI. I'm not saying that we cannot get there. I'm saying that we need to be, depending on how we want to think of AI. Again, this is how we're starting the argument. Depending on how we want to think of AI, we need to be thinking about these issues. I recognize that all of these companies that are providing this capability are losing a lot of money. Think of how much money OpenAI is using as a poster child of this. But if we want to think of it as a quote unquote utility for the population, right, to make them better, to make them more intelligent, then we need to be thinking about affordability.
So in this dimension, AI is in the same boat as internet.
Yes, it is. It is
and mobile phones, right?
Mobile phones in what way?
Mobile phone access.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Because depending on my plan, I may have a better data plan than you, right?
Yeah. Yes, but the quality of the responses is not impacted. It is impacted where I have how much data I can get access, as you say, or where I have it accessible. Maybe I don't have accessible mobile telephony when I go to another country, right? Because I haven't paid for that plan, or maybe that's extremely expensive. but the quality of my reception is not being impacted by how much I pay.
Right. All right. So any other essential characteristics of a utility?
I think very trust. I mean, I trust that my electricity provider is going to be giving me the right service,
the voltage is advertised.
Right. And here, because of the data, and because actually even of what we're going to discuss afterwards with how user generated content, the trust is not there, right? I rely, and who is going to establish that trust? It's a whole different story. Actually, I would say that for cloud computing and internet, the service of the internet, I trust it, right? I mean, when my provider tells me this is the bandwidth that you're going to have, this is the uptime that you're going to have. There's a trust there.
But isn't that trust location and service provider related?
What do you mean by that?
In other words, if I'm in a different part of the country where it's flaky, I don't necessarily trust. Like, for example, if I'm in another part of the world where the internet is flaky, if I schedule a Zoom meeting with you, I don't trust that I'll be able to meet you, right? So.
Okay, you're talking about quality of service, or are you talking about the quality of the output? Because here with AI, we have two issues. There's the
quality of service.
Quality of service is one component, and there I think we're okay. I mean, whenever I log into ChatGPT, I can have an interaction, right?
Okay, I see.
But to me, it's more an issue.
I see what you're saying.
Do I believe the result?
Right. Assuming that I can connect to the electricity provider, I know I'm going to get the right voltage.
Exactly.
And in this case, I don't know if I'm going to get the right answer.
That's right, because I do not know whether the data that was used to create that model was vetted enough, was scrutinized enough, whether the model is creating behaviors that were completely unanticipated. I mean, again, this is not an uptime. The model may be up all the time.
Especially right now when the foundation model providers are in this very, very competitive race. So they're all out pushing models quickly to get ahead of the competition, right? So they're adding features, and it's not clear how much red teaming or QA or testing they're doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. The one thing
but Evangelos, so the difference there, so in the electricity, I guess it's the same in some ways. Electricity market, do I have a choice as to who my electricity provider is? Yes, in San Francisco. So maybe there's competition.
Actually, in many parts of the world,
maybe there's competition, right? So yeah, and all of them behave equally well in terms of the output dimension that you described, right? So
yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
and again, the more I was thinking about this, Ben, I saw a spectrum. I mentioned earlier, countries like the Middle East, like UAE or Saudi Arabia, even China to a certain extent on the other side of the world. They're taking the government is taking a very hands-on approach to how they're going to deal with AI. I think the United States is coming on the other extreme, where it's letting, again, not unlike what we've done with other technologies, we're letting the market decide, right? It's very much market driven. And then Europe is somewhere in between, and they have their own issues, but I think there is the spectrum, and I think as depending on how we want to utilize AI, I think we will need to decide where we fall in this spectrum.
Any other features of?
No, I think for starter is good. I'm not advocating, by the way, that the one thing I'm not advocating, and I want to make sure that our listeners understand this, is there's an aspect of utility, like particularly in electricity, where prices are set by some governmental
it's
body.
regulated pricing, right?
And I'm not advocating for that. I mean, we have to decide whether, again, depending on who we want, assuming that we want everybody in the population to have access to this capability, we may need to impose some, contributions, discounts, however you want to call it, so that it will not be considered that they have and they have nots. I mean, again, we talked about internet, we talked about electricity. I think that will require some deeper thinking.
One question on the output, right? So on the electricity analogy, right? So we're talking about standardized, commoditized output. So we're not saying commoditized in the following sense, right? So if I sign up for Gemini, what I want is for Gemini to have a predictable output, but I don't want to force it to have exactly the same output as OpenAI's models. Right?
Exactly. And the same thing, by the way, with every other things that we take as for granted, whether it is electricity, internet provision, mobile telephony, we make choices, right? And the choices could be quality of service related, a place of residence related. I mean, we make choices, right? And I think that even with electricity, in many places you have choices.
It's just that if we're both customers of the same AI provider, we should get roughly the same service.
Exactly.
Right. What about so in the utility space, right? So there's the notion of a natural monopoly in the sense that there's high CapEx, high fixed costs to get into the market. And then after that, the margins are low. And so then in many ways, there's few players in each market. So is that what you're anticipating in AI as well, right? So
look
at the cost of these foundation models, at least now.
Exactly.
Who knows? There might be a breakthrough in models, and the entry might be lower, right? So,
right. I actually think that we are benefiting from having multiple providers. I think that what it costs to become a legitimate provider is again that has certain characteristics of what the electricity providers do. I mean, think of the conversation that we're having in this country about whether to use nuclear to use nuclear energy and how much it costs to build a nuclear power plant. And whether we need it because our electricity needs as a country are such that we need to build more. We compare ourselves to China many times and we say, here's how many, I mean, right now, China is building 30 nuclear reactors or building one, right, or two maybe. I mean, so I think these are countrywide considerations and decisions. And from that perspective, actually, I agree that we need to have a national policy, and maybe that executive order is the beginning of that. We cannot have, for example, one state deciding to provide one type of AI and another state provide, if we want to see that as important for the population. Right. I mean, we saw internet important for the population. We saw cloud computing important for the population. We saw the web important for the population.
So explain to listeners why then we have state level regulation for electricity.
Actually, I will go back to another area that I'm very involved in, this autonomous vehicles.
Okay.
And I think that in many instances, like that, the lack of decision making by the federal government forced states to start legislating or regulating on a local basis. And when such large investments are involved, as the one that we were talking about, autonomous vehicles, or in this case, artificial intelligence, the companies that are making the investments do not want uniformity, right? They want to be able to say, I'm going to build to one set of rules, okay? And I think that this had not happened with AI in the same way it has not happened with autonomous vehicles. And so from that perspective, I think that under the right objectives, having a federal umbrella of rules is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Again, to me, it points to the fact that we do see AI as something that the entire population of the country needs to have access to and utilize. Not only corporations, not only rich corporations, but every company, no matter how small, and every citizen, no matter how poor. That to me is what we have to be striving for, if you will, right? And I think that will help us as a nation.
One last feature I want to throw out. I think you addressed this, but passive consumption, in the sense that when I plug my appliance into the wall, I don't need to know how electricity works. So I don't need to know how AI works when I use it. Is that a fair requirement for a utility? You don't need to understand how it works.
No, actually, I think you need to understand how it works. That's what the example that we were saying. You don't want your child to be putting his fingers in the outlet, right?
No, but I mean the mechanics of.
But you don't want to see how you don't need to understand how a neural network produces an answer, right? Or how a neurosymbolic system reasons about something. But you do want to understand what are the implications of asking the question.
The basics. All right. So topic number 2 is section 230. In section 230, for our non-US listeners, is section 230 of the Communications Decency Act in the US, which protects online platforms from liability for user-generated content. So basically, the idea is they're distributors, they're not publishers, and so they're not liable for user-generated content. So what is Section 230 in the age of generative AI? Well, first of all, Section 230, historically, people associate this with social media, right? So Facebook and all of this, all and similar platforms. But on the other hand, you have, they're not social networks, but people are interacting with Meta.ai, Grok.com, or ChatGPT, Claude. So, and they're generating content clearly themselves. It's not user generated. So just the chatbot itself, Evangelos, what's your take on whether or not, they're clearly publishers, right?
So, Ben, I'm going to, this was actually, when you brought up this as a topic of discussion, I thought it would be a fascinating discussion, and we may need to revisit, but let me start by saying the following. The way I think about it is, unfortunately, I have to break it into a few cases. And I don't think we can switch. When we were thinking about social networks, we could think about it in one set. But with what we're doing right now, I think we need to start creating layers. And let me tell you of a couple of cases that I'm thinking about. I can use Llama, that is provided by Meta, to generate a piece of content and post that
on social media,
on Facebook. No.
Let me take that itself. Yeah.
So at that point, Meta
or Meta, I think Meta at that, or Facebook and Meta.ai will integrate so that you can actually generate the thing inside the Facebook interface.
And I think that will put them into an even more precarious position of whether Section 230 will apply.
So is that user generated? Because the user came up with the prompt.
But it is Meta that trained the model to create that. So in a sense, Meta is also a creator.
Yeah.
Right. Because so from that perspective, the Section 230 as we know it today, that should not apply there. Right. Because in other words, you should not give them an immunity from that perspective. You have another situation where
even though they might say, well, the user was the one who came up with the prompt, we just gave them tools.
Okay. So here is something.
It's like a camera, right? So here's a camera. You take the picture, and then you post it on our platform. The camera is something that we made.
But here's the difference now. And by the way, there's an A and a B. Yeah. Let me stay with the Llama use case because I think it's particularly interesting. Let's assume that I download Llama to my computer. Yeah. Okay, which I have the ability to do. Yeah. And now I use it, and maybe I even fine tune it with some of my data. Yeah. Yeah. That's a very different use case than if I use Llama on
the platform
on Meta's computer.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So again, when we think about how do we refine Section 230, we really need to start thinking about these kind of cases. That's what I'm saying. It's not a simple thing as it was when we just had social networks. Another use case, I use GPT-5, let's say, or 5.1 to create some content. And then I put it into Meta or to Facebook or TikTok or whatever, right? That's a whole different case because at that point, TikTok is just or Meta is just the
platform.
The platform, and in that case, they should have the same immunity as they have under Section 230 today. So
it's when you unify the two, which by the way. OpenAI has kind of signaled that they might be interested in doing something like that, right? So having a social media platform.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's not as easy anymore, and unfortunately for whoever wants to think the next iteration of Section 230, they don't have an easy task on their hands because they need to start distinguishing among all of these cases. And I'm sure this will go to courts, and I pity the judges that they will have to think about all of these corner cases of who is doing what and why and what data was used to create the model, and was that model fine-tuned or was it used out of the box, and was it used on whose computers was the content created.
And by the way, we're having this discussion on the week after the Trump administration released a national security strategy, which, among many things, express skepticism about content moderation. Right? So that's additional context.
Yeah, I mean, think of the following. What happens if I download a Chinese model and I fine tune it, and now I put it on X, where I put my coin? I mean, it gets very, very complex and hairy very quickly.
Right. And what about so here, this is one of my pet peeves about Section 230, by the way, because there's the notion that I'm not a publisher, right? So I'm just a distributor. But once you have a recommendation engine, you're exercising editorial oversight. Isn't that a publisher?
Yeah, you're absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
even so you look at something like TikTok, right? So by the way, one of the big reveals in this TikTok book that came out this year is that and of course, it's no surprise in many ways, but it's clearly laid out in the book that uh, TikTok, at least in the early days, and I think up to now, they have something called the ability to do heeding, which is basically you're a TikTok employee. You go, oh, this is an interesting piece of content. Let's make sure this gets a lot of views.
Amplify it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And so that's editorial. That's a publisher.
exactly.
And a recommendation engine is editorial,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So short of so who do you think is so the people that the companies that will be kind of much more in shaky ground moving forward in your mind are the companies that will unify generative AI with a platform of a publishing platform of some sort, right? So you can imagine Substack. What about if Substack starts providing generative AI tools natively inside Substack and
Yeah.
then someone posts it? Because Substack also has the equivalent of tweets and things like that. So they will
Yeah.
also kind of fall under this, right?
I think what
So it's
I think
it's
the
not just images, everything generative.
exactly. I think the point that you and I are making
Yeah.
is that as we move further into the utilization of AI in every aspect of our life, whether it is information creation and dissemination, entertainment, productivity, whatever research, we need to rethink how the regulations that we created for, in that case, social networks and those type of technologies need to be reconsidered and updated in order to make sure that the right parties assume their responsibilities. And I think it's, again, the point that I'm trying to get across is that this is far more complicated than when we had with straightforward social networks. Even if you take the recommendation engine capability and amplification capability out, and we need to have a comprehensive rethinking of what are the implications of what we're doing here.
But by the way, this unification of generative AI with social media is essentially happening now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, look, we want these companies, in order, obviously, to support their business models, and they are always striving for convenience. And
Yeah.
to me, to have the ability to do all this from within the same platform is a convenience.
Why
right?
should I copy and paste over?
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, so
Yeah.
it's all an issue of convenience, but convenience has implications.
Yeah.
And what I think what you and I are saying is that these implications can be pretty complex, and we need to make sure that we understand them and take care of them, so that we will not be faced with unpleasant surprises in the not too distant future.
And by the way, so content moderation itself is increasingly being done by AI.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the AI on every step of this pipeline.
I mean, we are trying to, again, under the guise of productivity improvement, we're trying to incorporate AI in along that entire stack, right? And again, there are implications for making these decisions, and we need to consider them, and as opposed to just accepting them.
So there's even simpler examples, right? So imagine YouTube Shorts or TikTok short videos, right? So
Mhm.
these platforms may not necessarily help you generate video from scratch, but they can take something you film, right? So I film something and then they enhance it with generative AI technology. But in the meantime, who knows what they're adding? Maybe there's copyright violations or whatever other objectionable things. So who's liable? Is it the content poster or the model that created it or the platform that distributed it, right?
And by the way, when you say the model that created it, again, point that I wanted to underline is the data that was used to create the model that.
But then Evangelos, they'll say, well, sure, we helped Evangelos enhance his video, but he ultimately was the one who decided to post it.
Yes. Again.
So we're just distributors. We're not publishers.
I think that we cannot get, what I keep saying is we cannot make a decision that applies across everything. We need to look at this new stack on a layer by layer basis and determine what applies to Section 230 as it stands today, what needs to be enhanced and how, and what needs to be created, maybe Section 231 or whatever, right? I mean, but that's all I'm saying today. I'm not saying I'm not going to,
I guess
do this, don't do that, but I'm saying that you need to explore it in that way.
I guess it just occurred to me that even though they helped me create the content, I'm the one who decided to post it. So then that's their out.
Yes, but then you talk about amplification, recommendations. I mean,
but that's happening now, regardless of the type.
Exactly, and as you said before, even based on what's happening now, we need we need to update.
So their thing right now is we're distributors, not publishers. Because what's the difference between a distributor and a publisher? Publisher exercises some sort of editorial oversight. In their mind, we're just publish everything that people post, so we're not editors. But then the algorithm is the editor. But the algorithm is the editor now, even without generative AI. So what's the difference, Evangelos?
The difference is that with generative AI, I'm creating new content. And the creation of that new content, which is completely different.
But I'm not the post decision. The decision to post was made by the user.
I understand that.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying, that there are certain aspects that will remain the same.
Yeah.
But there are certain other aspects that will need to be updated, because these companies are having a much different role now in the creation of this content.
No, but still the boundary, distributor, publisher exercises editorial oversight about what gets published, right?
Yeah.
And what they're gonna say is, hey, we just publish everything.
Then I'm not saying that they're not going to push back.
Yeah.
What we're discussing right now is whether Section 230, in the presence of generative AI,
needs to be revisited.
How these companies are using generative AI for the benefit and the convenience of their users is sufficient. And the point that we're making, I think, is that because of the processes that are involved, it requires a re-examination.
Yeah. But I can, now that I verbalize it, I can already anticipate their response, which is simple, right? So basically, we're still distributors because we just publish everything.
I think that the other side is going to say you can be considered distributors as long as you do not provide your own models to generate.
Yeah, but they're just writing tools. They're like, I'm providing you with a Microsoft Word, is what they're gonna say, right? So,
Yes, but it's
but
not
but
that.
you Evangelos decided to post that thing.
There's the aspect of creation and there's the aspect of posting. And this is why I said from the beginning that you need to take it on a layer by layer basis. You cannot sweep it under one case.
But the response is clear, which is basically we're still distributors because we're not.
I'm not going to argue this, Ben, here. I'm just telling you how I do.
So YouTube, on the other hand, I think YouTube at least passes your video through is their copyrighted material here. Right? So
yes.
So there's something like that. But you can go on Twitter, you can just post anything you want. So regardless of whether or not Twitter helped you compose that tweet.
And today you can do whatever you want. The question is whether there is a need for some type of action.
Yeah. No, but this is going to be a hard fight.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I said I'm not going to. This is going to be a long process in several levels of courts.
Yeah.
And that's why I said earlier on in this conversation, I pity the judges that will have to understand the issue and render a decision.
I guess to me, Evangelos, in closing, I go back to my main pet peeve, which is still amplification, and the recommendation is still the most important thing here. So once you do that, you're actually a publisher. So that's the one that actually needs more revisiting than the content generation, right? Because if you generate content, it is reverse chronological order. No one might see it, right? But if it gets amplified, which honestly, that's an editorial. That's clearly editorial, right?
There are some issues here that I think they're very subjective to each one, to how each perceives the role of this in the content generation. But if you are an adversary that is creating, that wants to create problems for another party, whether it is a government or a group or an individual, you will obviously want the lightest degree of interference. On the other hand, if you're thinking about national security, if you're thinking about harm to people, you will need to be thinking very carefully about how you approach each of these layers. I'll end actually with this example. Think of what Australia just instituted with forbidding access of social media to individuals under 16 years of age.
Right.
Whether you like it or not as an American, right? Or the Australian government decided, in whatever you want to say, to take an action because they felt that in this way they protect their population. Right. Or a segment of their population. I think that the same kind of decisions will need to be done here. And all I'm saying is that they cannot be done in one fell swoop. I think they need to be done on a layer by layer basis, no matter how hard that is.
Yeah. I still think that we need to focus on algorithms. Reverse chronological. You can do whatever. We might be lighter touch, but once you have an algorithm, you're a publisher. Yeah. And with that, thank you, Evangelos.